Arise Ghana held a demonstration, day one of that demonstration, which has been marred with a lot of violence from both sides. The police have confirmed their willingness and availability to provide Arise Ghana with security for 2 days. That's day two of the demo on the route agreed between them against hope. We believe in hope, okay, that they will stay true to their words in good faith and in the interest of peace. That's a tweet from Sami Jemfi. He's the NDC's National Communications Officer, one of the leaders of the Arise Ghana demonstration. But the man who started it all here on Media General platforms later, Mr. Roland Walker, went to join him on Mawena Agbeta, is in studio with me. He will tell us, first of all, how he got there, what he saw initially, and how he braced the storm to bring us that report. Welcome, my brother. How you doing?
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to be
Yesterday, when you got the call in the line of duty, what ran through your mind?
Well, I anticipated that I was going to be there. I had been informed beforehand, and so I was just ready. I mean, initially I mistook the day for Monday, and so I was all dressed up appropriately for official work. But thankfully it wasn't on a Monday, and so yesterday I just braced up, woke up my usual time, and just prepared and got here and ready to cover and then bring the very latest details in terms of whatever was going to happen. Little did we anticipate what was going to unfold, but I mean, we were prepared. It started very peacefully with lots of singing. There were joyous at some point. There was the jama to and fro, low beds with canoes on top. It was all, you can almost call it a fun activity of some sort when they were gathered at the Obra spot. And that went on from 7 a.m. because I went past them as early as 7 a.m. to get to the office for proper briefing as to what to do. We're taking a life pack and get a general sense of understanding as to what exactly it is we're going to be doing yesterday. And so I went past them coming to the office in the morning, and they were already there in their numbers. They had begun to troop in. And so between 7 a.m. to a little past 2:30, it was all just the usual
singing and trying to build up their morale and all of that.
All of that.
At what point, so during this time, there were addresses. Who addressed the crowd?
There were lots of addresses, and between the addresses, I took turns to be doing reports and all of that, and so I couldn't catch all of the addresses.
But the ones you saw?
But the ones I saw, the General Secretary of the NDC, he was the last person to address, but it started off with the National Youth Organizer of the NDC, George Opariado. He, when they moved into the Park and Gardens of the Kwame Nkrumah Circle, they began to address the crowd. They had initially gone into conclave with the Deputy Inspector General of Police, COP Yohonu, as we were later made aware of. And that was where it all began to build up. But still, the expectation was that it wasn't going to get there. And so when they went into conclave, it was evident from what the supporters were saying was that it appeared the routes were going to change. And so even when leadership of Arise Ghana were meeting the police, the demonstrators and some of them who were outside were already visibly angry as to why the police wanted to change the route. And so when they came out from that meeting, then they went up to where the statue is, which is a much higher pedestal as compared to the general ground. And then they began to address everybody. George Opariado started, Sami Jemfi. He announced to the crowd that the police was insisting that they use a different route and end the protest at the Independence Square. And they said they weren't going to the Independence Square today or tomorrow.
Because that was not what they had agreed with the police. And what had they agreed with the police prior to that?
Prior to that, we know in the lead up to the protest, the general conversation was that they were going to picket at the Jubilee House or in front of the Jubilee House. The court ruling and all of that put that in jeopardy. And despite they filing appeals and a stay of execution, there was still not a definite agreement as to whether or not that was going to happen. From that meeting with COP Yohonu, it appeared that that idea had been rubbish totally. They weren't going to the Jubilee House. So the demonstrators now wanted to use one of the routes or go and end up at one of the places they were to end up today, which was the Finance Ministry. So yesterday they were originally supposed to pick out at the Jubilee House. Today they go to the Finance Ministry and end up in Parliament. When the Jubilee House was scrapped, they say, okay, since you've agreed on us going to the Finance Ministry, let's use Ring Road through Akweje and then end up at the Finance Ministry. And that was where the disagreement was at. And so that's what built up into all of that. So George Opariado, Sami Jimfi, Bernard Mona, other leading members, driver unions and the likes spoke. And then General Secretary Johnson Asiedu Nketia, he spoke in the local dialect. He wrapped it all up and said, now they are moving. And even before that, I was still doing some live reporting. So for radio.
Now, in between this time, where were the police after they had their conclave, encounter with the leadership of Arise Ghana Movement? Where were the police? How were they positioned?
The police moved away, and then if you're very familiar with the area, there's the overpass, which takes you towards the Ring Road, and then there's the outer lane where a lot of the buses and the trotros use. That lane, the police moved a little further.
So towards where the old bridge is.
Where the old bridge is, and just before you get to the newly constructed Circle Dubai, as it's locally called, there's a first overpass where people coming from Newtown and the likes use headed towards Accra. They moved just under that bridge and were waiting with shields and the likes, seeking to prevent the demonstrators from moving to the Ring Road because it appeared there was a stalemate. They wanted to use the Ring Road. The police said, we cannot allow you use that. And so after Johnson Asiedu Nketia spoke, and it appeared there was an order of some sort, and so the demonstrators began moving towards the Ring Road. And the leadership of Arise Ghana as well were also joining them in moving towards the
At what point did the violence start?
That was the starting point. So when they began moving towards the police, obviously there was a barricade. At that point, I was still inside, wrapping up with a report. And then immediately we started seeing tear gas being thrown by the police. And so quickly, I began running towards where the tear gas was being thrown from. And I had to leave my cameraman behind because he had to gather a lot of the equipment,
tripod and everything.
Yes, and so I started running towards where the pelting of stones and all of that was, and I had to use the other side because the police had barricaded that point. And so, if you like I keep saying, if you're very familiar with that overpass that takes persons from.
So where was this? This was under the bridge.
This was under the bridge.
This was after the overpass. This is the side road.
Exactly.
Towards the Ring Road.
And they were directly under the bridge, which takes commuters from Newtown headed towards Accra.
Okay.
They were directly under it, and that's where they had barricaded, and you could tell that the demonstrators were coming towards them. And then, if you watch the video closely, these are footages that we've been able to see afterwards, where the tear gas was thrown from amongst the police. The first one didn't really go towards the demonstrators. It landed within the police officers. And that's where it degenerated.
But then that's dangerous if the police themselves are aiming to fire a tear gas and then it lands amongst them. That's tantamount to maybe ill training. So this was, a demonstrator picked it and threw it back.
And then that angered them, and then the stone.
So it was a back to send that kind of tear gas.
And so if you watch some of the footages we've been showing since yesterday, you see someone pick up the tear gas and throw it back at the police.
So police fires the tear gas. No, you have to bring back that video again, please. Let's see that video again. Police picks up tear gas, fires. It didn't reach the destination. It landed among the police,
and then other ones
who were trying to block the demonstrators.
Yeah.
And then somebody picked it, and then fired it back at the police.
Yeah, picked it with his hand and then threw it back. That was a situation. And other footages which we have shown that as well. And then I was on top of this bridge, the bridge under which the police were preventing the demonstrating crowd. I was on top of that bridge because some of the demonstrators climbed onto that bridge and were pelting the police with
But
stones.
what necessitated the firing of the tear gas? Was it insults from the people? What exactly? Why were the police firing the tear gas?
It is a difficulty to be able to tell exactly what necessitated the first tear gas which was thrown, because if this footage is anything to go by, the pelting of stones and throwing of sticks and all of that was after the tear gas went through.
Right.
I mentioned that I wasn't initially here.
So you had to run there later.
And so this video provides some further understanding as to what might have
exactly
triggered exactly why the demonstrators decided to retaliate.
When the demonstrators started throwing the stones, what was the reaction of the police beyond the tear gas fiasco?
Well, the Form Police Unit truck, the water cannon truck, then came forward and was driving towards them and was sprinkling the water, seeking to disperse them. That was another of the many actions.
So these are your shots from atop the bridge.
Exactly.
Okay, that's overlooking the Obrasport Lorry Park
and then
the Guelph filling station on the other side and all of that. But what's happening now? The police, there are car ties on the road. The police are towards it. And viewers will have to forgive us because Mawena was running and taking the shots at the same time because his cameraman had been left behind. But what was happening here?
So I mentioned the demonstrators had moved to this road now, which leads from Newtown headed towards Accra.
Right.
This was well after 5, getting to 10 minutes before the police were able to make their way on top of that road or on top of that bridge to be able to calm situation, because they were there for well over 5 minutes. They were pelting the police with stones, and then the police started firing the tear gas towards us as well. And so I suffered a lot of inhalation.
Oh, sorry.
I had to stop at some point as well because I couldn't see properly. I was coughing as well, and I had to stop, go back, get water from somebody, rinse my face, and then come back again. So when the police started coming up again, they realized I was in a media jacket, and so they allowed me, and the protesters had blocked the road to traffic. So when vehicles were moving towards Accra or anywhere headed towards Newtown, they had put tires there, and then they were returning the tires. If you seek to insist, they could smash your windshield. And so they had begun to block the road. They were pelting stones from on top there, which gave them some advantage because the police were beneath them, and so it gave them a clean advantage. So
they were throwing the stones at the police.
Yeah.
But then they started burning the tires.
They started burning the tires. Not just for the tire burns were on the newly constructed.
Where did they get the tires from? Did they bring them from home?
So, if you watch the footage, you see there's a vulcanizer there, and there are piles of tires, and so it was really easy.
They dismantled the vulcanizer's shop.
Yeah. So these were the first shots I got when I ran towards what was happening. And I was standing here, and then you could tell the police, the Form Police truck, just sprinkling the water. Luckily, it was not hot. Luckily, it was not hot.
It was not hot, but it's dirty water.
Really, really dirty. Because I happen to have.
So if it's not hot, it has to be dirty.
Yeah, and so
let's hear the ambience. Tank retreating because the people were moving towards it and flying the stones, as we say.
So that initial attempt by the FPU truck, the water cannon truck, to sprinkle water didn't deter them. It wasn't hot, it was just dirty water. And so that angered them the more. They picked up a lot more stones. There were lots of police vehicles. There was a police bus, which glasses and all of that had been destroyed. Other trucks had been, their windshield as well had been smashed and the likes. And so this didn't deter them at all they just picked up more stones because the water wasn't hot. It was just dirty water. And so they just continued to pick more stones, as you can see, and they continued to pelt the
Were
trap
there
with
school
stones.
children who were trapped into the people who were not part of the demonstration were trapped in the middle of all of what was
Lots
going
of
on?
people were trapped because that Obra Sports Station houses a trotro station where, as typical as trotro stations are, people sell all manner of things, food and the likes, and they were all caught up in that because that was just where all of the action was happening at. And the police was firing tear gas directly because the demonstrators had taken refuge amongst the trotro drivers and the buses which was there. And the police had no option than to continue to seek to disperse them.
Were vehicles destroyed? The lorry park? Did we have vehicles destroyed? Did you see anything?
I didn't see personally vehicles destroyed, but I saw tear gas fired towards someone had parked their Hyundai Elantra there, red Hyundai Elantra, and tear gas was being fired towards it. And so during the reportage, I mentioned that private vehicles were there, but that didn't deter the police, and they continued to fire tear gas towards that as well. And so that was the initial confusion.
But at this point, where were the leaders of the demonstration?
They had gone back.
They had gone back where?
They had gone back. Obviously,
They were not there.
They were not frontal in terms of all of this stone pelting, sticks throwing, police retaliating with tear gas. They were not there.
And then came the arrests. So 29 people so far, the police say have been arrested. But people were arrested for what exactly?
I saw a number of the individuals arrested. In fact, we were live when the first person was picked up from amongst the Obra Sport area, the trotro station. The police went. One of them was protesting that he wasn't a part of the demonstrators. He wasn't clad in red. That I have to be honest. He wasn't clad in red, and it was difficult to tell who was a protester and who wasn't, because when they moved into the trotro station, and obviously there are people there who are boarding buses as well, and people who became bystanders and were watching. And so the police moved in. They have their own intelligence. I'm just reporting what I saw, because he was protesting and insisting that he wasn't a part of them, but they pulled him away nonetheless, and then they began to chase after the protesters. And so this initial standoff ensued for well over 30 minutes, where tear gas is fired. Then it appears the police calms down. Then the demonstrators come back again. They begin pelting the stones. It happened for over 30 minutes, and then the police, I don't know who gave the order.
That's somebody who got hurt.
Yeah.
Do you know how this person got hurt?
No, we got there and he was already bleeding from his head. Already bleeding.
But the police went to his aid.
Yes.
Supported him.
Supported him, tried to wash some of the, as you can see, wash some of the blood from his head.
Were there ambulances at the venue of the demonstration?
When you get to the Kwame Nkrumah and the interchange that's been constructed, there's been room made for fire service, the ambulance and the likes there as well. There's been room made for all of that.
I see. Again, the allegations have been made that there are individuals who were planted in there to foment trouble. They were the ones who started pelting stones. Did you, for a second, get a sense that that was the case?
I saw plainclothes police officers. I saw plainclothes police officers, and so if
they were visible enough.
Yes,
for you to identify them.
I identified a plainclothes police officer. I didn't know him from anywhere, but I identified him.
How did you do that?
Because he had a tag around his waist area, which wasn't visible to all, but I saw it. And I saw that he was a part. And initially he was just close to the police officers before he moved in, because intelligence gathering, they have their own ways of going about things. So there were plainclothes police officers. I didn't get to see officers, or I couldn't identify officers. That's what I'm supposed to say. I couldn't identify officers who were in Arise Ghana T-shirt like the organizers have alleged. But I saw plainclothes.
What was this
police officers?
plainclothes police officer that you saw?
It was in a short sleeve.
What color was it?
Short sleeve, looking whitish sort of. He was in a short sleeve and had stripes and the likes. Short sleeve with khaki, and then just a normal individual that you
was blending in.
It had blended in with the demonstrators, because I was moving to and fro from where the fire station at the interchange is to the demonstration. And this was before all of the chaos started. And so there were plainclothes police officers there, because I saw some of them. You saw
some of them, given the tag that you saw on them as well. But then, I saw one disturbing image. A man handcuffed, surrounded by about 6 or 8 police officers, who was slapped in the face by a senior police officer.
Yeah.
I got a bit worried about the kind of signal that would send to the other junior officers and whether or not they would take a cue from it. The reaction of some of the leaders of the demonstration, Sadiq and Adam Agbana, questioning him, for example. But did that trigger anything around that place?
Well, at this point, a lot of the action already was happening, but leaders had come. So we need to understand that the back and forth went on for a long time. After the footage we saw where the water cannon was spraying the dirty water, there was calm for 10 plus minutes, which resulted in some of the leaders, where Sadiq, Adam Agbana and the likes came, and they were questioning the conduct of the police as to why they were firing tear gas. And so some of the footage shows where Prince Derek J was questioning that they had an agreement with the police. He was very angry, stating that they had an agreement with the police. Why was the police firing tear gas? Why was the police using rubber bullets and the like? There was that general sense of calm initially for over 10 minutes. And they said they were going back to speak to the supporters. And so after Sadiq
Did they do that? Did they speak to the supporters?
They went back to speak to the supporters.
In the same way they had done at the beginning of the demonstration?
I didn't follow them because I was still with the police, because some of the demonstrators had begun to bring the tires, even after Sadiq, Adam Agbana, Prince Derek J and the likes had left. The protesters were still there, and they began to bring the tires onto the street and began to set them ablaze. And so they left, headed towards the larger crowd, which was way towards the roundabout area, the first roundabout just before you head towards the VIP station area.
I saw a man whose eye, one of his eyes,
hit by a rubber bullet.
Popped out. Hit by a rubber bullet.
Yeah, he had been hit by a rubber bullet because they were firing rubber bullets. So he was hit by the rubber bullet, but unfortunately he hit his eye, and it wasn't a pleasant thing to see at all.
I see. So today is day 2 of this demonstration.
Yeah.
So eventually, did they get to their destination, which was the Jubilee House? Of course, that had been taken out.
Yeah.
Did they go to the finance ministry?
They couldn't go to the finance ministry. The police dispersed the crowd, essentially. And so from under that footbridge where we stood for over 30 minutes plus, there was an order where they began marching towards them now, and they were firing the tear gas and dispersing the crowd. They did that from that point, which is almost a starting point from the ring road to the VIP station. And that was where they ended. They believed they had dispersed the crowd, and so they couldn't come back together again. And then the police on their own began
It appears then that the demonstration, which was supposed to have started at 8, ended at 4, did not end at 4 p.m.
It didn't end at 4 because they were still there.
At what time would you
4.
give and take estimate that ended?
It was 6 o'clock. It
6
was 6
p.m.
o'clock, and there were people still at the Obra spot at Circle. People were still on the street. Even after the police had dispersed and had taken control of the situation, there were Arise Ghana protesters still there. This time, not coming together, but dispersed and scattered across. You could see them in the T-shirts, red armbands and the like, some tied to their heads. They were still there, still very much present, even as we rounded up.
What was their mood?
accusing the IGP, accusing the presidency of being behind all of the things that we were seeing. That was the general sentiment. They were hooting at the police at some point because they managed to run into the other stations. There's a VVIP station before there's a VIP station.
Yeah, there's a 2 p.m. express.
And so they were hooting at the police, even when the police was retreating after they believed they had dispersed the crowd. They were hooting at them and the likes. And so it didn't feel like they had left. They were still there. This time, only the changing factor is that the police had taken control of the situation and calm had prevailed. There wasn't the firing of tear gas.
The traffic situation, let's talk about that. What was it? Okay, so they were dancing to reggae music.
Yeah, and so at this point it was all...
I wonder why people always dance to reggae music at demonstrations.
It feels more like in tune with what, you know, reggae is a lot conscious. They speak a lot truth to power and the likes, and so I've been to a number of demonstrations, and you tend to find lots of reggae music played, lots and lots of reggae music played, and so nobody knew anything was going to happen at this point.
This was the beginning.
This was the beginning. They were all jubilant, and I must say that the police appeared to be very well aware of intent by the protesters to want to come through the ring road, because when I was going back from the office, there were policemen dotted all across the ring road headed towards the Obra Sport. Policemen,
they were ready
on that stretch. And so I wasn't surprised when I climbed onto it and I saw lots of police officers there. It didn't surprise me because I had seen them, some in Cannes. They weren't on the street at the time. They were stationed at different
Would you say
places.
the numbers of police you saw were equal or perhaps more than the numbers of protesters were available?
The police were there in their numbers, close to 1,000, and I wouldn't be overestimating. The demonstrators, well over 1,000. I wouldn't say 5,000, but well over 1,000 demonstrators. And the police were close to 1,000. And when the force was used to disperse the crowd, obviously a lot of the women who were there and some of the much younger people also left the scene. And so at that point, there were a lot more officers who could coil whatever situation it was there at that point. But one thing that I realized, and which was a matter of concern for me, is I know there's been a lot of talk about tension in the country, a lot of people angry and the likes. I saw it firsthand yesterday.
How did you see it?
Because when I climbed onto the railing initially and I was reporting from the top, some of the individuals who began throwing stones were not originally part of the demonstrators.
They were not?
They were not. These were individuals who saw the police began using the water cannon, and they were angered and also just began to pick stones and started throwing at the police. Some of these individuals were not police officers. I had people passing by who couldn't pick stones and throw because they had to go to their business, but were livid with the fact that people had come to protest and they were being met with force.
So they had to join them.
Yes.
They felt obliged to join them.
I personally, because I ran towards the action and I saw people who were they weren't clad in red. Some of the people who were throwing stones weren't clad in red. They had come, or some of them who live around that area. It's a hub for a lot of these, what people like to call thugs and the likes. And they were there and they on their own began to pick some of the stones and throw at the police. And these weren't people who I had saw who were demonstrating from the beginning.
I see people dressed like Wulome or traditional piece, were clad in white. Did you authenticate whether or not they are true Wulome or they were just masquerading as such?
Well, it was difficult to tell. That's something I have to be honest about. But the invitation was open to all. And so they made it a point to invite as many people as possible and to make it as apolitical as possible. And so in fact, these people were given reverence at some point. They were ushered close to where the leadership of the protesters were. When everything was calm initially, they were ushered towards that side and taken away from the sun and the likes. But we didn't directly ask questions or anything with regards to whether or not they were truly coming from the palace of the Ghana Traditional Council or the likes. But they were there present. There were different groups, drivers and the likes, driver unions and the likes, and private individuals. I met security analyst Adib Sani personally, there where we interacted, and he told me that wants this to be as apolitical as possible because the matters that confront, which are being brought front by the supporters, are things that affect everybody.
Did you see Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo?
I didn't.
He had promised to be there.
He had promised to be there. I didn't
and some other,
I didn't,
you know, senior citizens had also promised.
I didn't personally see any of them. If someone saw them, then that would be different. I personally didn't see them.
Mawena, I thank you very much indeed for your detailed report and keep up the good work. Yesterday, Mawena Egbeta was out there and he's brought us his own account of what he saw, what he felt, what he experienced. Today is day 2 of the demonstration. That's the Arise Ghana demonstration. Sami Jemfi says the police have confirmed that they will provide security or protection for the demonstrators. We pray that we're hopeful that this will not turn violent as it did yesterday. We condemn it in no uncertain terms, the destruction of private and public property, and also the people who are hurt. Our empathies and sympathies go out to you. We pray that the perpetrators will be brought to book because a crime is a crime. It doesn't wear no color. And we pray that they will find a middle ground, both as demonstrators and as agents of the law, I should say, and so that we can have peace. One Ghana, one nation, one country, one destiny. Happy birthday to Priscilla Amuchum Ampofo, CEO of the Sweet Adipa Cakes, and also a teacher at Bepong SHS in Kwao Bepong. This is from Abigail JC at the commercial department here at TV3. It's your birthday. Happy birthday to you. And a happy birthday also to you if it's your birthday. Ni Ama Ai, my senior from school, is corroborating your account. He says, well, exactly what you're saying is what happened because he was there at a point. He actually works close to the venue. So he's corroborating your account and suggesting that that's what happened. Juliet Baywa, Group Head of Sports here at Media General. It's your birthday today. Happy birthday to you, Juliet Baywa. Also a happy birthday to Emmanuel K. Was Danku. It is your birthday today. And a happy birthday also to Mrs. Rosemont Na Amankwa Wellington, CEO of the Wells Pub in Odoko. This is from all your children. They wish you a happy birthday indeed. We'll see you after the break. There's more here on TV3 New Day. If you're out there joining the demonstration, be safe. And if you're a policeman out there detailed to protect the demonstrators, also be professional and be safe as well. We'll see you after the break.